All right, so I'm gonna do a garden tour for myself too, to show what worked, what didn't work, where everything was, and how I can probably improve next year. So we're gonna come over here. This is my irrigation system, but you can see there's no pump hooked to it because my pond went dry this summer, so I gotta come up with a better situation for that. These are purple, like green bean style green beans. They did fairly well along this fence, so probably just need some compost. I had cucumbers down in there. Weeds are taking over now, but they also did good. Down through here, we had a bush green bean and dragon's tongue. They produced really well. We pulled 50 pounds at least out of there. My asparagus is very exciting because next year will be its third year, so we can actually harvest. If you can see them, look at all the wine cap mushrooms. I inoculated this area this spring. They seem pretty happy. Yeah, this bed right here, that's all some tillage radish and the remnants of the green beans. I went through and chopped it and then flipped the sides up, trying to make it more like a raised bed. Broad forked it all, and I now have it planted out in winter rye. We'll see how that does. Strawberries, I have to thin them somehow, but they just grow like weeds. I already filled the whole back of my mini truck with plants out of here, and they just fill the gaps right in. I'm not sure if I need to work on them more or not. This is all planted out in some cover crop, tillage radish. There was some buckwheat in here, but after I whacked it with a weed eater, it died off. We got squash coming through still. Need to get those squash plants pulled. This bed through here, I originally tried to grow lettuce and broccoli in it, and I just couldn't get it to go, so I planted it all out in crimson clover, let it run the summer, and then I went through, chopped it. I got a tarp on it now to kill it. I was planning on putting garlic in here, but after digging around, you get down about 10 inches or so, and it's holding water. I think it's caused because that strawberry bed, that asparagus bed, this blueberry patch bed, and that blackberry patch. Those were, when they were originally planted, they were dug down about 24 inches and filled in with logs, like a hugelkultur style, and mounded up, and I think that's what's helping hold the water. That bed didn't hold water when I checked it, but I'm just paranoid of it. This bed was the same thing, back to Eden, no till, and the only thing that lived in it was planted out in tillage radish and buckwheat. I had chickens on it. They pretty much decimated it. And to keep the manure, I did run a rake through it, a stone rake, raked it all over. So I don't know, I'll probably pull that material out, use it as a mulch somewhere else. I am fearful that it's anaerobic. These are my raspberries. They are not planted on logs, just a mound of compost. There's blackberries in here too. So this end is blackberries, down through there is raspberries. Over here we have a Red Delicious apple that I bought from Tractor Supply in 2019, and you can see that it just stinks. but it's still here. Big tree, Tractor Supply. That's what you get. It's got disease on it. Looks like, I think rust. Well, it didn't kick in until late in the spring. I'm not, or late in the fall. I'm not spraying it. I don't like spraying. This is where I grew carrots and parsnip. They did extremely well. There's some oregano there. Extremely well. Down here at the end we have some beets. I use these boards to get my carrots started. And I actually shaded this patch of carrots because it was hot and dry. And they did really well, so that's just a experiment thing. Some yellow squash still on here. I put squash plants around trees all over the place, and the squash bugs come and get some, but they always leave me a good harvest, so I don't really sweat it. Over here we got another Red Delicious. Planted at the same time as the other one, and this one's fairly healthy. We got some Egyptian walking onions, raspberry, strawberry. I got a grape back there that I started this year up the fence. And there looks like weeds, but that's actually more Egyptian walking onion, more strawberries. Some raspberries that I spring planted. We didn't have any rain, so they didn't really thrive more. I don't know if you can see the asparagus plants back there, along with the weeds on the fence. And we have a weed here. Let's go ahead and get him out. Mr. Weed. Anyone tells you weeds don't grow on wood chips, well, they're not being 100% truthful. But nice little young raspberry. I know by the end of next summer, it'll be a nice, beautiful plant. They're ever bearing, so it's fine. They didn't do super good this year in the dry conditions. Asparagus looks a little lackluster, but Purple Passion, my other patch looked like this at the end of last summer too. That's kind of why I'm making this video, so I know. More Egyptian walking onions. Moonglow pear. Peeled all the pears off it. And they weren't really ripe, but the squirrels were just having at them. So decided I'd have a few. Ripe them in the house. That's just some squash seeds back there that I just threw in the ground. It is acorn squash. So we'll see how they do. That's my sifter. That's how I sift my compost and wood chips on the back of my little truck. Put it on there, dump it on with a tractor, go through it, discard the big pieces, small pieces go in the garden. This tree is a Bartlett pear. I planted it in the fall of 2020 from Stark Brothers. It's done pretty well. It's got a little bit of disease leaves on the top, but we're not spraying. This is where I grew my potatoes this year. I have this all planted out in winter hardy cover crop. That, I'll be honest, I have no real idea how I'm going to terminate it in the spring, so that'll be fun. This is a Kiefer pear, planted in 2018. I got a fair amount of pears off of it, but nothing amazing. This is a Asian pear from Stark Brothers. I planted it last fall. I can't say that it overly. It's a hardy giant Asian pear. I can't say that it did fantastic this summer, but we didn't have rain, so some compost. This is just a patch of sunflowers that I planted for the wild birds. I just threw handfuls of them down here, so let them come and get them. We already collected everything we wanted to feed our chickens off of another patch. In the back we got some chokes, so and this is our top pond. This is not what I use for irrigation. This is just a frog pond. I like having the frogs in my garden. Dug it out a little bit more this summer because it was so dry. Mounted this bank up. We get a lot of runoff down through here. So, see the ditch? There's a spring that pops up by that tree. Water that comes down there. This is tillage radish and a little bit of hairy vetch. Never dealt with hairy vetch before, so we'll see how that goes. The back row along the fence, that's all planted out in tillage radish, buckwheat, and I don't think I put hairy vetch in there. I have a few grape starts up the back, but they got no water and they survived the summer, so I know they'll thrive next year. I did run a tiller down through there, only set it about a ½ inch deep to break that up. Next year I'm going to plant sorghum Sudan grass there to have it for feedstock for my compost. This whole mound along here, that's all going to get planted in sunflowers next year. The gray soil underneath, that is the dirt that I actually have to deal with. Some of that came, well, most of it came out of my pond. When my pond was dry, I had it dug out to so it's a little deeper, so hopefully I don't run out of water again. Over here, my first fruit tree that died. It was a apricot, and it just didn't, it got swarmed by inchworms. I would have sprayed that with BT, but we can get to it. Comfrey. That little guy's an apricot with some comfrey along next to him. This back here is a mulberry that I planted from a little tiny stick. Bought it on eBay in the spring of 2021. There's 3 of them. Kind of excited about how they're going to turn out. Never eaten a mulberry. Back along this road. We're still looking at the back of the fence. We've got another grape. So, in the spring, I'll get in here. This cover crop should mostly be killed. Knock as many weeds down as I can. I'm going to plant that all out with squash. Just let them take over. I'm going to do squash down this side too. Right in the weeds. That right there is a I don't think you can see it. Barely hung on without water, but it's a cold hardy kiwi. We'll see how that does. We've got 5 of them along this. This is an Alberta peach that, quite honestly, I should just cut up. It doesn't really grow and it doesn't give me fruit. That was planted in the spring of 2018 along with this one. This is a plum tree. I think it's a Santa Rosa. I'll have to take a look. No, it's a medley plum. I planted that the spring of 2021 from Lowe's. Probably not going to do that again. This is a Liberty apple dwarf that I bought from Raintree. It did really well. I planted it this spring. This is another Red Delicious from Lowe's. Planted at the same time as those Alberta peaches in 2018. This right here, this little guy's amazing. It's a bubblegum plum from Stark Brothers. I planted this last fall. It was 1.5 inches tall. And turn my phone sideways. It's just thriving. It's beautiful. From Stark Brothers. This is another plum from Lowe's. It is a Santa Rosa. That's the Santa Rosa. Kind of an ugly tree. Had the graft unions really leaking on it pretty bad. Not sure if I've got any diseases on that or not. Another Red Delicious. This one planted at the same time as that one. Has given me nothing. Maybe next year. I have too many Red Delicious. I don't even really like the apples that much anymore. Another Alberta peach. It grows. This has never fruited. This is where I grew garlic last year. I had 250 plants in here, and they did amazing on this side. I now have it planted to brassicas. We got some red cabbage, some Brussels sprouts. Kind of got them in the ground a little late. Some Bibb lettuce. I think it's called fancy lettuce. Just kind of randomly planted in here. In the background's my grapes. Definitely have to keep up on pruning them better. Those right there that look terrible are St. Teresa grapes, and they produced a lot of grapes this year, but they just don't look great right now. I know they needed to be sprayed, but we're not really doing that much. I do spray in the winter. I spray with lime sulfur. So once these are de-leafed, they'll get sprayed with lime sulfur, then they'll get it again in the spring. Before bud break, after bud break, or after they drop their petals, flowers. And then I will, after that, use kale and clay 3 times on all my fruit trees, and that's it. I'm not gonna just have a toxic orchard. These are some onions that I planted. I actually don't know. I think those are walking onions. Not sure what those are. Did have a huge onion harvest Elisa Craig and Walla Walla did really well. As you can see, I really need to get my butt in gear weeding, but haven't got to it. These are some delicious strawberries. I'm gonna try one. This is the only patch of everbearing that I have, so kind of nice. Rest of them all June. But that's mostly the garden. So the plans for next year are we're upping our garlic. I'm gonna try and plant 1,200 cloves. 1,000 to 1,200. So these are my tomatoes. On the way up through there. Did fairly well. I overplanted tomatoes this year because there's so many varieties I wanted to try. And next year I'll about half that. Peppers, tillage radish, apple tree. And we got chickens up there working. They're working that bed over, getting ready for me for next year. Thank you, chickens. So yeah, these are all peppers. They produce really well. Plants are small. We didn't have water. The pond was empty and I didn't have irrigation. Keep making that excuse, but pulled tons of peppers off them. Mostly hot peppers. We don't do good on sweet peppers. I don't know if you can see. It's a Black Beauty. They did alright, sweet peppers, but that's about the only ones that ever do really well. A little bit of crimson clover just tossed in there, feeding a little bit of nitrogen. Kind of like doing that anywhere I got a spare spot. Take some type of cover crop, shove it in there. These tillage radishes, they love my growing system. I guess they're kind of like weeds. So I figure that we're gonna go through, we're gonna eat up 5 of these beds, 5 of these spaces. So that's 1, 2, skip that one because I got the thing over it. 3, 4, 5, just in garlic. That's why I'm kind of bummed about my work down there. That's 3 years in the making, and it's holding water, so done. Not gonna try it anymore. And last but not least, these are dragon tongue beans. I got so many of these. They grew amazing here. Some other green beans. Mostly letting these go to seed now. So I can try and replant my own seeds next year. I think those down there were called Dragon Fire, and I think these are called Dragon Tongue. Isn't that bean beautiful? There's the other half of my meat chickens. I'm gonna have to lay a bed down through here, so I'm using the chickens to do the work, clearing the grass. Hopefully they eat up some weeds. Now let's come in, mulch it, planting it and hope to keep the weeds down, since 5 of my garden beds are going to be turned into garlic beds. These are my row tomatoes. About done for the season. It's late September, so way overplanted tomatoes, but with the drought we had, went 21 days with no rain and no pond, no irrigation, and it's a long walk up here to haul water, so I just gave up on them. Planted those tillage radishes, hoping, because there was rain in the forecast. Came in, put the tillage radish in, and gave up on the tomatoes. Came back, I didn't even look at them. 2 weeks later, tillage radish was up and the tomatoes were bouncing back. Pretty amazing. Those are San Marzanos over there. They really need to ripen. Sorry about that. You see the tomatoes in there? These grow very well, and I really like them. I think I'll do them again. If we zoom in, we can see some of our friends' vetch. That just naturally grows here. It's pretty neat. But, so, this was all corn. And I didn't space it properly or anything. There we go. That was all corn. And then this was all sunflower. I'm running the chickens through it, get some manure in, and I'll let them just pulverize it. And I'll go broad fork it and try and get winter rye in it if I have time. And hopefully hope for the best next year. Instead of growing half corn, half sunflower, this is going to be all corn, and back there is going to be the sunflowers. Well, I like trying to use sunflowers to blaze the trail. Last year that was just grass, and I just put leaves on it, a little bit of wood chips, dug down, planted the corn and sunflower in the grass, and let it go. It was pretty weedy, but they did well. One last thing to show. You see I also went through and I got hairy vetch planted in with all these tomatoes. So I'll come in here once these are done, pull the tomatoes, and let that hairy vetch take over. And somehow figure out how to terminate it with, I don't really want to till. So I'm going to try cutting it in the spring. I can't tarp the whole thing. I think we're 180 foot long row. I plan on putting some of it into cucumber next year. But that's where we are. Getting in the mini truck, calling it a day.